Okay, so welcome, friends. It is Wednesday. It is Wednesday, right? The 22nd, yes, of April 2020. I'm super, super pumped that I'm joined by the fantastic, the wonderful, the friendly Lenox Ramsey Jr. And I say friendly because this man and I became friends over a ridiculous pre-flight brunch, breakfast, dinner, I don't even know what it was, at the airport. I don't know, like 2 years ago, was it?
About 2 years ago.
Not 2 years ago. And then we became friends. By that I mean I brainwashed you into becoming my friend. And and now we're here.
Right.
Here we go. How are you, man?
I'm good. I'm holding up, man. The quarantine is definitely taking its toll.
You was all right?
Yeah, the quarantine is definitely it's having its impact, but you know, I'm surviving.
Yeah, so tell me about that. Like, I mean, you are a full-time political fundraiser.
Right.
That is your job. How do you navigate that through the ridiculosity that is COVID-19? And when I say ridiculosity, I'm not trying to like diminish how serious it is. It's like it's a ridiculous time. It's a ridiculous time.
Yeah, we don't want the internet trolls to lose their mind.
Right.
But
right.
I mean, there are a lot of different ways. I think it's definitely, from an overview, it's definitely had its political hiccups, I guess you could say. But overall, it's much like everything else we've seen. Political fundraising itself has come to a halt in many regards, and especially I know we've seen the last few weeks. We've seen almost, was in the last number I saw was 22 million people file for unemployment, and so you know, that definitely has had its impact for folks who are running for office and being able to get people to rally behind them financially.
Right.
But I actually started quarantining, so I had different voices being in political circles tell me that something was coming down the pipe. And
wait, you got the heads up? Where was my phone call?
So I'm not. Look, I'm nowhere. I wasn't a plug. I wasn't. But I heard some friends that told me some things that they believe was going to happen. Both who are in the medical field as well as in government, and so I actually have been sheltering in place now since mid-February, early to mid-February, and so yeah.
Okay.
And to give context, the reason why for me is about shortly after, maybe a year after we met, I had a severe respiratory issue, and that put me in the hospital for about 8 days. And so for me, I can't take chances when it comes to
I think I saw something about that on Instagram, I think.
Right. And so I chose to take the safe route and not travel or do anything. So I've been sort of losing my mind.
Right. What part of the DC metro area do you live in? Are you still in DC or are you elsewhere now?
So I am in Petworth, but right now I'm staying at home with family in Norfolk, Virginia, where I originally grew up. And yeah, let's just say sometimes you remember why you live in your
Oh, shots fired. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you know, for all of those people who go through the struggle, I feel you.
Right.
But yeah,
what's your family like? Do you like your parents, your brothers and sisters?
They're great people. They're really great people. No, they're great people. It's just, you know, like any other family, you have complicated relationships and things, and staying in close quarters like a lot of us are right now, it sometimes can complicate things. And I think that's everyone, I think at this point, has had it. There are moments during the quarantine, and no exception to the rule. But definitely it's been what, March, April, so what, almost 10 weeks, 9 or 10 weeks now for me. And
insane.
Yeah, wow, who would have thought? But yeah, it's definitely impacted me both personally and professionally, like it has everyone else. And that's even with the little bit of notice I had. I mean, right before Trump started stating the things he was saying about the virus, and we'll dive into that at some point. That definitely, I was probably maybe a week or two before those comments were starting to be made, and people started actively talking about it.
Right.
Yeah, so it's been a journey.
Okay, so I don't even know where to start with this. I guess the softest question I have is, did your family start quarantining with you on the 15th of February as well?
They did.
And how many of you are in the house?
Right now, 4. It was 3, and then my big brother came home from college because he goes to UVA. They shut down probably, I want to say it was early March.
Yeah.
And so he's been here for about 4 or 5 weeks now, and I'm sure he's going through his version of what I'm.
Gosh. I feel so blessed to just have me and my housemate and our cat.
I probably need a dog right now with me.
Right. Okay, so sanity aside, like, what are you doing? What are the things that you're doing to help you kind of navigate being in quarantine with your family?
So obviously I still have to work. Bills still have to be paid. And I mean, they don't stop just because the coronavirus wants to show its face. And and my clients are still heavily dependent. I have a client who has her primary in August in Florida, and then I have a client who actually just won her primary in March, and a few others scattered around the country who are going through their own elections between now and then. And they still require me to raise money and to make sure their strategy is going the way we planned it, regardless of whether or not they're quarantined or not. And so we're having to make some adjustments in how we do things. For example, one of our mainstays is fundraising events, and now we're doing virtual fundraising events where we invite people to essentially come to a video town hall, or Facebook Live town hall,
right,
and hear her out and give money as a result of whatever that spiel ends up being. So we're like a lot of industries that had to go to virtual means, Zoom, and other things to do what we do. So we're no different in that regard.
Can we back up a little bit, because as you know, I'm not originally from the States. My mum is, but I was born in New Zealand. So a lot of the people that follow my Facebook page are either from New Zealand, Australia, or some other random, Fiji, like Indonesia. And not everybody is aware of the intricacies of the American political system, other than the fact that it appears to be really fucked up. So,
no fun.
To put it politely. So can you give us a rundown of what exactly your role is?
Got you. So I run a company called Ballot America. What we do is we essentially are what is called a full service firm for Democrats who are running for office. And full service means that if they need us to come in and raise money, that's what we do. If they need us to come in and set strategy to win their election, we come in and do that. If they need us to hire staff, we come in and do that and manage the operations. So essentially whatever they need, that's what we do. In our system, we have to, there's not a government pot of money that candidates can withdraw from to run their campaigns. They have to raise it from folks within the community and across the country to be able to run for their seats. And so my job when it comes to fundraising is to give them a list of folks essentially that align with their interests and what they're running on, and that candidate has to convince those supporters to give them money. Essentially is the crux of what I do.
Okay. And so you've pivoted everything, and I say that word with great apprehension because I feel like the buzzword of quarantine has been pivot. So you've had to adjust your business to be very online. How is that going for you?
Look, I'm definitely taking a hit like everyone else. At the end of the day, I'm a small business owner. Is really what the core of what I am. I'm not a Fortune 500 company with millions in the bank that I can just pull from. I still have to be innovative and think outside the box in how we do things. as I was mentioning earlier, one of the mainstays of fundraising for us is fundraising events and having a large sum of people show up and write checks to the candidate. Well, we can't do that right now because of the quarantine. And so we've had to innovate and think outside the box. And so we've had to move our fundraising events to online fundraising events at town halls, and things like that. We've just had to adjust and essentially continue to what we're doing. We have to run these races and win these elections. So they're not going to stop because I mean, it's clear as day. They're not stopping. These elections are still going on. So we still have to run the campaigns.
Do you have you studied much of the campaigning from other countries or at all?
I have some understanding of some of the others.
Okay. Do you find it interesting? Like, I don't know. I guess I find it personally, I find it really fascinating how much money goes into campaigning here in the States. It blows my mind. So when you're fundraising, like, do you just like? I don't even understand. I need to, I have no concept of like the enormity of that job.
Right. So let me back all the way up, because I think a lot of folks, they hear fundraising and they cringe. They think about corporate interests. They think about billion-dollar companies and corporations controlling and giving to candidates and telling them, puppeteering candidates on what to do. Right. And the majority of candidates that run in this country are not funded by corporations, corporate PACs, or conglomerates or anything big. It's the community giving them, whether it's $5, $10, $15, $20, and they're running a campaign to win their race. And so, and a lot of my candidates in particular are what we call fringe candidates, and that candidates that are supported heavily by the establishment, whether it's the Democratic Party nationally or by any big backer. It's usually a school teacher that raised their hand and said, I want to run for office, or a nurse or something like that who decided, hey, I want to run for office. And they call me or someone like me to come in and say, hey, I've been doing this for a while. Let me navigate you through this process and who you should talk to and things like that.
So like local campaigns then? Or, okay.
Well, I do. So right now I've been working mostly of the congressional campaigns, folks who are running for House, the U.S. House, U.S. Senate. But I got one of my starts was on the Obama campaign, and after that I worked a lot of local campaigns, folks who running for city council, mayor, things like that.
Insane. And you're like 21 years old, right? Like
no. I wish. I wish. I tell everyone, it's funny. I guess we could dive a little bit, not too much into my story right now, I guess, but it's funny. I don't have, my path to this place was purely by accident. I didn't jump into politics. I didn't study political science. I just kind of happened into it.
Right.
And I'm 36 now. When I got started, I was 28. And running in this race with a bunch of 21-year-olds and looking at like, what am I doing here? Long story short, I got in because one afternoon, the Obama campaign in 2012 called me up and wanted me to volunteer. I originally wasn't going to volunteer, but my mother compelled me to go out. She was a big Obama supporter.
Hey, Mom!
And I went and volunteered, and the person who hosted the event, she recommended that I go to meet the staff at the office, and I did, and I was sold. I went from that one event to essentially I was there 40 hours a week volunteering. I put everything I was doing in life on hold just to do that. About 2 months into it, they offered me a job. I took it to do more community organizing. Obviously, the history on that. We win the race, and I decided I want to learn more about politics. And so, like I said, I originally grew up in Norfolk, Virginia, and I decided to move to Washington, D.C. to learn. And that's how I ended up in D.C.
That's cool. Yeah. And so now that you're living here, while staying in Norfolk at the moment, but since you're living here now, but you're working for, I guess, organizations, campaigners, people who are in the race from all over the country.
Correct.
Right.
Right. So
how do you navigate that?
Well, a lot of travel. I mean, that's how we met. A lot of travel. But
musicians and politics, same thing.
Yeah, and a lot of times, a lot of it is traveling, and then a good portion of it also is just like we're doing that a lot of remote stuff, whether it's Zoom calls, phone calls, emails, texts, and a lot of my work doesn't require me to be physically present, which is a great thing. Unless I might be out of a job, but so I'm fortunate in that regard that I can still do my work from anywhere. My best office is Starbucks, so I just
we need to talk. That is not a good office. It's shitty coffee. I'm just saying, like.
Look, coffee aside.
I had a conversation with somebody. He's like, but it's reliably shit. Like, the same.
Facts, though. That is.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So Starbucks is the coffee of is the office of choice. Carry on. Sorry.
Well, no matter where I'm at, the point I'm making the thing is that no matter where I'm at, I could post up, set up shop, and do work with as long as I have reliable Wi-Fi, I'm good to go. And so that's been a very fortunate thing for me in this process. I'm not tied to wherever, but I've worked in New York City, rural New York, Tampa. I have a client right now in the Tampa area, in Florida, Tennessee, Texas, California, which is, I think that's where I was headed when we met. And so since I work with folks all throughout the country, in all parts of the country, whether it's urban, rural, they all have the same need when they're in for office.
Yeah. So that's cool. So okay, let's come back to 2020. And now in 2020, you're working with how many clients?
So right now we have about 4 clients who are running for Congress throughout the country right now.
They're all looking for so how does Congress work?
So Congress, in our Congress, we have 2 bodies. We have the U.S. Senate, and then we have the U.S. House. And so all of my clients are running for U.S. House right now, House seats. But right now the Senate is controlled by the Republican Party. They have the majority seats controlled in the Senate, and the Democrats control the House. And so either side can propose bills, and once they pass the bill on their side, it filters into the other side. They have to go through and do their revisions, and then if it passes there, then it goes essentially to the president's desk, and he signs it unless he doesn't want to, and then he vetoes it, and it goes back, and possibly through the process again. Okay. Yeah. So.
Okay.
The Cliff Note version of how our government works.
No, I mean, I've been living and voting here for a while now, but I think a lot of people, because in New Zealand, I don't know if you know how the New Zealand political system works, but we have a parliament of 120 seats. And so when you vote for a party, and let's say, for example, the party that has the majority vote doesn't quite meet the 51% threshold, they partner up with other parties to get that 51% percentage, and then the rest of the house is filled up in accordance with how many votes they got. So it's a really it's a really different system, and it really is a lot more representative, I think, of what the actual popular vote is, right? Whereas I think here it's not
even close. It's not.
In the nicest way possible, shall we say. But okay, so now that you mentioned that you do a lot of traveling and you're doing a lot of things by remote, how are things going for you guys?
So I have one candidate that they're fine. They're okay. Nothing has really changed for them in terms of their stride. They won their primary, they're good to go. And then my other candidates, they're starting to struggle because they're not as well known as the other candidates, and so they have to go out. In theory, what normally would do is go out and meet voters and meet donors and try to raise money and try to get votes. And because they can't do that, the struggle is real for them. And so for a lot of them, they're not going to be able to do that again until probably July, when things start to slow down again or pick up again and get back to normalcy. So I mean, they're still doing the things they have to do. They're just not having the same success rate that they would under normal circumstances. And so they'll be fine. It's just it's gonna be a process for them.
I want to pick up on what you just said, like when things go back to normal. What does normal look like? Because I've been having, I don't know if you've seen any of the other kind of episodes I've had of this, you know, you're the 4th, which is exciting.
Yeah.
But a lot of the conversation that seems to be going around, at least in my circles, is talking about how we are in this weird, scary, crazy place because our normal has not been working.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, so in campaign world, normal for us is essentially we're working 60 to 80-hour weeks, both candidate and their staff doing whatever it takes to win, essentially until, in this case, November. I'm not quite sure that it's going to be the same when we come out of this immediately. At some point, we'll get back to it, I think, but I don't think immediately it's going to be like that for us. Especially, like I said, when a lot of our things are event-based, where we're gathering massive amount of people together to try to convince them to go out and support our candidates. I don't think that is going to, go back to normal immediately. That's going to take time. And we can have a different conversation on whether or not that's going to impact November, how we have that election, if we have that election, which is a different piece of conversation.
Wait, what?
Different. Look, I'll say this: everyone believes we will have this election. I tend to believe we will have this election. There's just a lot of scary things happening right now that I think.
You're freaking me out, Lenox. Tell me more.
Don't be freaked out.
But it's how we will have that election, whether it's going to be vote by mail, or the traditional way where we go and vote at the polls. It will happen. The question will be, will it happen via sitting at home filling out a sheet of paper or going and sitting in a line?
Right.
And there are other things that could happen,
but that's a very slim chance of happening. It's not something that traditionally is happening in any situations. Even in previous pandemics, we've never delayed an election that I can think of. And so I don't foresee that being an issue. But there are different things, obviously, right now that folks are floating out there and trying to make sure we have a resolution to them before they can even happen.
Okay. Because I'm just thinking back to, what was it, like 3 days ago when somebody, when the Wisconsin primaries happened, and apparently there have been like 4 people that have come out having contracted coronavirus as a result of that. What are your thoughts around that in November?
Repeat that again. You went in and out on that.
Sorry.
You're good.
Internet, yay. Okay, so I think I read, was it 2 or 3 days ago during the Wisconsin primary, because that was the other day, much to the demise of a lot of people, much to the unhappiness of a lot of people. Apparently 4 people have now contracted COVID-19 as a result of having to go and vote. What are your thoughts on that? And how it relates to November?
So that's the risk of going out to vote. That's the issue that we're all hoping. That's the worst case scenario, right? We don't want that to be nationwide, because that's just Wisconsin. Could you imagine if that's the entire nation that has to go out and vote? If we're talking about more than 4 people. I think right now we need to wait and see, but we've had some hiccups, we'll call them now, and how we've had. I'm itching to really dive into this, but I'm trying to slow myself into it. Hiccups in how the whole thing's been handled.
Just dive in. Head first. Let's go. Real talk. This whole thing is called real talk. Come on.
But we've definitely had some missteps in how this whole thing's been handled, and so we essentially right now are a conglomerate of 50 states or 50 countries trying to handle and individually handle our response to the virus. And I think that's is definitely causing a lot of issues. And I think that going to November could be one of the issues it could cause, where we're still having a 50-state strategy instead of a US strategy in how we tackle the virus. One of the key things for November is that if we need to go to vote by mail, then we should go vote by mail. Obviously, the other side, and let's say the other side being the Democrat, Republicans, are very hesitant toward doing that because it allows for everyone to participate, and that doesn't benefit them. To be frank, it just vote by mail is not something that most Republicans want to see happen, because it means that Black and brown folks especially could participate and can't be pushed out. And so it's not something that they're very fond of, even though the idea has definitely been floated out there and pushed. And there are a lot of states right now who for decades have been successfully doing it. But those tend to be more liberal states.
Oh, really? Okay. I wasn't aware that there were states that were actually doing the mail-in ballots.
California just did it. I think they just started doing it exclusively this last year or so. I believe Washington State does it. Colorado, I think, does a variation of it. So there are states who have been successfully doing vote by mail without any issues. No, you know, because the big conspiracy theory about Republicans is that there's rampant fraud and vote by mail, because anyone who gets a ballot can sign their name, and that's not how it works. It just doesn't work like that. But you know, everyone, and one of the things I think that has definitely been an issue for me during this whole quarantine is the continuous and increase of conspiracy theories that we've seen. Oh my God.
Talk to me about it. What's been the craziest conspiracy? Because we could go down a wormhole right now. What's been your favorite or the craziest conspiracy regarding 2020 politics?
Well, regarding the 2020 election, it's just that repeating what the president is saying, that is, we know just the mantra is not true. It's just not true. That corona is fake. It's not that you can take certain medicines and it'll cure it. There's cure for coronavirus. Let's be very clear, right? And it's funny, they just released a small study they did on the alleged cure that the president's been out touting, and the results were horrible. One of five people died as a result of taking get the name of his high something.
Hydroxy.
I can't remember, but but the study showed that 1 in 5 people died from it, or over 5 people died from it, and everyone else who took it faced the same fatality rate as we've been seeing throughout the country. And so it doesn't do anything. It makes the process, it makes it worse. And so him and then telling people, oh, you can take this medicine and you'll be cured, it just is very reminiscent of, I'm not sure how much of US history you're aware of, but before the FDA was in existence, how you had people who had tonics and cures. When I say, if I have the magic potion, just take this, and this is essentially what we have going on right now. It's absurd and ridiculous, but that's
the number of people I've seen, like, heat kills viruses, so what you need to do is sunbathe more, or lots and lots of lemon, honey, and ginger. And I'm like, I will be the first person to drink the crap out of some lemon, honey, and ginger. Don't get me wrong, but that's not because of coronavirus.
Right.
I just like it. It's good for my body.
It was just, he's a problem only because he keeps repeating things that are just unfounded, not true. And I think what's even more deflating is the people around him. They're looking at him like, what are you saying, as he says it, and no one's stopping him. No one's interrupting him. No one's saying, okay, that's not true. Everyone's afraid, it looks like, to say, hey, this 45, you're wrong, shut up. No one's willing to do that. And I think that's been largely an issue. And I think, obviously, as I mentioned before, the fact that he is not coming down with one set way of handling things and saying, we're going to all do this, all 50 states, regardless of what it is. I know you guys want to open up the economy too, but I want to make sure people first. And he's just not taking that approach. Oh, side note, we did also find out that he owns stock in a company for the hydroxy whatever, which explains why he switched again. Yeah, we did find that out a few weeks back. So, I just think that is a side note.
So how are you, as you're being bombarded with all the bullshit? That should be a song, by the way. I'm gonna write "Bombarded with Bullshit." How are you, as Lenox Ramsey Jr., the political campaign fundraiser, how are you navigating that yourself personally and making sure that you sort of maintain some kind of sanity, in amongst all the fear and I don't know, chaos, I guess?
That's a very good question. So the professional in me is telling everyone, including my clients, hey, if you hear something that's not true, or you hear something that remotely sounds untrue, make sure you vet it. Don't look. my rule of thumb is always YouTube, Wikipedia are not credible sources. If you can't use it in a college term paper, you shouldn't be reciting it as a source. Bottom line.
Yeah.
And so so anyone can get on the internet, post a video, I'm an expert, and they're medical expert, and they were just essentially picking the jam out of the toes. It's not, so you can't use those things as sources. So that's one way I've been handling that. On a personal end, to be honest with you, I'm very open-minded to a lot of different perspectives and views. I have friends who are Republicans, we disagree, and I'm fine with that. But it just, for me personally now, to make sure I have good mental health, I just had to mute them, block them out. Because you have people who are just reciting things that have just been proven multiple times to be false, but because it's not what they want to believe, repeating them. And I don't have the energy for it. I want to maintain positivity. And I've also just dive in and either done hobbies I haven't done in a while just to get my mind off of it, or done things to kind of learn something new that maybe I've been interested in doing, but just didn't have the time. Now I have nothing but time, so why not, right? And so that's kind of the way I've been personally dealing with the quarantine and trying to keep focus, because at the end of the day, what I don't want to have to do is have to ramp back up to get back to normal. I just want to be there. And so that's really how I've been dealing with it personally.
That's cool. That's really cool. What are the hobbies and interests that you've been diving into that you haven't had a chance to do before?
So the first one is pretty normal, I think. The second one's gonna be a little weird, but the first one is running. I started picking up running again. Fortunately, I just wear a mask and I run. So that's something I haven't been able to do for maybe 2 years now, and I just started doing again.
Okay.
The other one, it's weird because not everyone. So before I got into politics, one of the things I used to do to put money together was build little entertainment fan sites. And then so like recently I built I'm sure everyone's familiar with Tiger King and Money Heist. So I built
haven't watched either of them. I have
what are you doing with your life?
I've taken control of my life and I'm like, nope, I'm not gonna watch Tiger King. Not gonna happen. I don't know who this Carol person is, but she does not seem like a quality human being. I'm good.
Nah, but after watching both of them, actually that started by accident too. But I after watching Tiger King, a group of my friends and I were just having the debate about Carol and some of the other characters in that show, and we started a group as a joke, and it kind of took off by accident. And so I was like, okay, this is a good healthy distraction. And so I watched Money Heist and kind of felt the same way after watching that, and I built another site, and that's been taking off. So it allows me to do something different and get out of the mindset of just politics all day or coronavirus, because I'm sure everyone's turning on the TV and every station it's something about coronavirus all day long. That's exhausting.
Yeah.
And I'm someone who's CNN and then MSNBC and all the different news channels, and I've just had to put them on mute just because of it. I can't.
Do you have much interaction with those kind of news organizations?
I do.
Yeah. And when you're interacting with them, have they brought it up?
Do they the virus?
Yeah.
Or
during this period of time, during this period of fundraising, like, is that something that they're really sort of stuck on, or?
I mean, the investigative journalists and the journalists who are covering campaigns, they are focused on it, but in a different context. They want to know what the campaigns are thinking, not so much in their operations, but in terms of policy. What would a particular candidate do with this particular policy, or how they would handle it versus if one of my clients has a Republican representative in the House and that she's running against. And so the questions we've been fielding is, well, your representative's been silent. He's missing action. No one can find him. How would you handle these things? And so she's taken it as an opportunity to be on the forefront and being the voice for the community on what things need to happen, connecting different agencies, whether it be the unemployment office or the IRS during the stimulus, and make sure her constituents, even though they're not hers yet, know where they need to go, since the incumbent isn't doing his job. I'm not gonna put him on blast here, but I'll be professional and I put him on blast here. But you know, those are the kind of things we're getting. We're not so much getting about how we're coping with it, but more so how we're going to react to it if the person is elected.
Okay. Okay. How are you feeling about that process? Like, I feel. Sorry, I got schooled the other day on my habits of using the words "I feel" when I'm actually meaning "I think." I've been hearing, shall I say, like a lot of people saying, you know, like this is a great learning experience for us around how to attack issues like this in future. I don't know. Do you think that this is like the start of something of the apocalypse? Do you think that this is like, obviously not the apocalypse, but you know what I mean? Like, do you think that this kind of stuff is likely to happen again? Do you think that we just need to, you know, really be vigilant and start looking outside the box for, okay, maybe the zombie apocalypse is a real thing, because basically that's what we're facing right now. Like, you know, like how do you build a campaign around that? How do you build an entire party platform based on what ifs?
So that's actually a really good question. I think that I'm going to take it from outside the campaign world and then tie it in. So there are a lot of things that are happening that I think as Americans we don't see day to day that are happening around us, we read snippets of an article or we hear different things, but we don't, because it's not happening in our, they're happening in our,
within America or within the world?
Both. Okay. And one of the examples I'll use, for example, is autonomous vehicles, right? One of the things that Andrew Yang, the recent Democratic candidate for office, he was promoting was the aside from the what do you call it, the basic income guarantee or the $1,000 checks that I would give, that he wants America to give to workers. One of the things he talked about was how technology is advancing. It's happening right underneath our feet and we don't even see it. One of the things he talked about was, for example, in a state like Iowa, there are already tens of thousands of truckers that aren't actually human beings driving trucks, the big rigs. And it's happening. And so
I did not know that. And my family's in Iowa.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
And so one of the big issues coming out of Iowa during the caucus was about how those jobs how we would take care of those jobs, or either saving those jobs or finding new jobs for those truckers who are now displaced because of the technology. Something else that folks aren't aware happening. Everyone believes that the self-driving vehicle isn't going to happen. Let me be very clear. There are over tens of thousands of things on the roads in America already, right? They're being tested. So I'm not saying that it's going to be legitimized, normalized today, but it's happening. And I think that, and those are just samples of technologies that have been going on for the last couple of years. And the last big context in regards to that, people have to understand, corporations like Uber and Lyft, both of those companies essentially told their shareholders they're willing to take losses for the next 2 to 5 years to invest all the money back into those technologies. That should tell you something, right? They're willing to report negative numbers when they report to shareholders because they're reinvesting, right? Right now, what's happening is that America's come to a halt, and we're seeing remote technologies, and we're just seeing a more aggressive use of technology to do things we normally did every day because of the quarantine. And I think when we come out of this, we're going to see a lot of things that we used to do not return to normal. They're going to be different in some context. And I think that's what the quarantine has really done for us, is that it's forcing our hand to do things that, quite honestly, we were, as a country, hesitant to move forward with for one reason or another. Something else I think that will happen a lot sooner than a lot of folks believe what's going to happen was moving to electric vehicles. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but we're seeing right now the battle with oil, and as oil prices drop across the country or across the world,
negative $4 or something.
Right. And so that's a battle that we've been trying to fight, you know, the gas guzzling vehicles for decades now. And I think that we're slowly moving into that realm. with Tesla and some of the other electric vehicles that have proven that, hey, we can actually build solid vehicles that are all electric, I think we're going to start to see that progression switch. And I think this situation, like, people have to understand, this is not something that's just happening in 2020. It's forecast that this thing is going to be 18 to 24 months before we have a vaccine. And that means that potentially for 2 years, we're going to be in this weird roller coaster with this thing. And so we're just, the world is not going to be the same. And we just have to accept that. Things that we're used to doing, we may be able to do them in some variety, just not the way we were doing them before. And that's
does that make you excited, or does that scare you a little bit?
Personally, I'm excited. I think that, while not everything that's going to happen is going to be positive, there will be some negative things that I believe will happen. But I think for the most part, we should be excited about what's coming. It just means that, the things we thought were going to happen in the year 2000, it's probably going to have a year 2024 or 25. But I think that it's something we have to look forward to. It's going to happen if we're happy about it or not.
Right.
As I've been telling all my friends who have been unemployed as a result of the quarantine, you need to start looking at the future and figuring out where your place in it is going to be. Doesn't mean that you have to aggressively go after it today, but you need to look 5 years from now and say, okay, I know 2 of those years I'm gonna be stuck in this weird space, right? Where do I want to be starting from that 3rd year onward, and how do I get there? And start asking. This is the perfect time. You're not doing anything all day. Start asking different people. Start talking to different people. Figuring out who. We have LinkedIn. We have all these different resources. We're the most technology advanced race or generation that's ever existed. We have the ability to reach out and touch people from thousands of miles away. Figure out a way to make things happen.
You're the second person to say that to me in the last 2 days, that we're moving away from the generation Z to not the generation, the industrial
right.
What is it like?
We're from
into the
Z to
technological.
Y to Z, right? I get what you're saying.
I'm getting my names wrong, but no, that's awesome. I really respect your excitement for that, and I totally agree. Close friend of mine, he's a fitness instructor. He owns his own school, and he's moved all of his business from person to person class, like in-person classes, to online. And honestly, some of the feedback he's getting is like, it's actually even more enjoyable because people can do it in their own time. And, that's exciting. That's exciting. Cool. So what does the future look like for you?
Dang, big questions.
We've only got like 5 more minutes left, so I'm going straight for the jugular, my friend.
To be determined. I'm not sure yet. If I'm frank, the last 8 years of politics have really taken its toll, and so I'm starting to look at my options of whether or not the next 5 years will look the same as the last 8 did, and we'll see. I'm very excited about things in technology because that's kind of where I was before politics, and so I may venture back into that, or I may continue to do what I'm doing. We desperately have a need in the political space for leadership, especially with our current president and the current people having office. So I'm excited to still do that work. But at the same time, when you've done something for as long as I've done it now, you start to get complacent, and sometimes it takes a change to kind of reinvigorate yourself and get back to a certain point that to be on the top of your game again. And so I'm looking at different avenues. I don't have an answer for you today on that.
that quote of like, if you're not growing, you're dying, or something.
Right.
That's what that reminds me of. Yeah. But that's cool. Well, I look forward to hearing from you, whatever decision you decide to make.
We'll do a LeBron James style, the decision on it.
Right. So, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
So you can follow me on pretty much all the social platforms. Just type Lenox Ramsey. That's LENOX RAMSEY. You can also go to my company's website, ballotamerica.com.
ballotamerica.com. And parting words of wisdom for the world?
Don't let the quarantine get the best of you. Just remember that right now you may be down and feeling out, but just take the time. Remember, everything happens for a reason. Just take time, find your place. It's not going to happen today, but pace yourself. It take the next couple of, years to readjust yourself. I'm going to take your and that.
Don't pivot, readjust. All right. I see you. Hey man, thank you so much for being here. I am keeping up the great work. Thank you for leading positive change through technology, and you like showing us how that it's possible. Being able to lead by example in a way that's like not just empowering people to use those means, but also just being like, hey, we good. I'm doing it. You're doing it. Like, let's do this together. Your energy is fantastic. I really appreciate your friendship, the work you do, and your general humanity. You're a good human.
I appreciate it.
I may not be like the most in touch human being, but I see you. I see you.
I appreciate it. Much love.
Cool, man. Thank you.
Thank you.